Europe, 480 million people, joined together in a political and economic union, the European Union. 25 countries in one partnership with Uganda. Most of the European Union member states have a bond of cooperation with a country or countries from the African, Caribbean and Pacific regions, commonly referred to as ACP. Uganda is one of the countries that benefit from this relationship. This bond was initially formalized through 4 successive conventions, commonly known as the Lomé Conventions. The most recent pact of cooperation between the EU and the ACP countries is the Cotonou Agreement, signed in June 2000.
The Cotonou Agreement makes a clear association between the political dimension, trade and development. It's based on 5 pillars. The reinforcement of the political dimension of relations between ACP countries and the European Union, the involvement of the civil society, the private sector and other non-state players. Poverty reduction is confirmed as a key objective within the context of the objectives and strategies agreed at an international level, for example, the Millennium Development Goals. An innovative economic and trade cooperation framework, and last but not least, the rationalization of financial instruments and the new system of rolling programming.
Africa, the Caribbean and the Pacific are the regions in which the world's poorest countries are found. About 60% of the European Community Aid funds are directed to ACP countries that have signed the Cotonou Agreement. Resources for development cooperation with the ACP countries do not come from the regular budget of the European Union. There has always been a separate funding mechanism for the ACP, known as the European Development Fund, EDF. Outside Europe, the delegations of the European Commission act as embassies for the EU. In Uganda, the office of the EU delegation is housed on this building, located in Kampala, the capital of Uganda. Each ACP country appoints a senior government official as its national authorizing officer to represent it in all EC-supported programs. In Uganda, the national authorizing officer is also the Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. A head of delegation of the European Commission in an ACP country works in close cooperation with the national authorizing officer in identifying, implementing and evaluating projects and programs. Established in 1976, this office comprises of Europeans as well as Ugandan staff, all working together with a common purpose.
At the very beginning already, in the moment when what was then the European Economic Community, when it was created in 1958, there was already foreseen cooperation, development cooperation with territories that were still at that time under colonial rule in Europe, but of course only of the original members. You know, the European Union had 6 members at the beginning and has 25 now, so there's been quite a change. And when Great Britain joined, the other former British colonies joined, as well as countries like Liberia or Ethiopia, who had not been colonies at all. So what happened in Uganda was just part of an overall strategy to be present in all these countries, and ever since we have had a delegation, even during the worst times, that is the Amin era, when, however, our activities had been reduced to quite little.
The relationship between Uganda and the European Commission can be seen as a house built on three pillars: development cooperation, trade, and the political dimensions, which are closely interrelated. Basing on the principles stipulated in the Cotonou Agreement, the government of Uganda and the European Commission prepared a country strategy paper, CSP, and National Indicative Program, NIP.
These papers define the basic framework for cooperation between Uganda and the European Union. They were signed in 2002, and they give a broad framework of the program. For example, the sectors that are covered in the relationship. For example, today we've signed an agreement on infrastructure covering the road, the Northern Corridor, indicating the various areas of cooperation in the private sector, for example. So it's the overall framework for cooperation between Uganda and the European Union, which is covered under these agreements.
Under the current National Indicative Programme, the European Commission has provided a total of 246 million euros in development assistance. About 1/3 of the total resource envelope is disbursed in form of general budget support. Here, funds from the EU flow into the government consolidated fund without being targeted to specific programs or sectors. Monitoring of these funds is based on the implementation of the Poverty Eradication Action Plan developed by the government of Uganda and launched in 1997.
The European Union assists us to implement this framework of the people through the budget support, through project support, and various other programs. So the idea, of course, is that Uganda's economy should be boosted so that it becomes more self-sustaining, so that poverty is reduced, so that the Millennium Development Goals can be achieved.
Uganda's Poverty Eradication Action Plan emphasizes increasing productivity and income in rural areas where most of Uganda's production takes place. This strategy is, however, brought out of its full potential due to hindrance by a number of obstacles. Poor road condition and transport networks form part of the obstacles that greatly constrain Uganda's development efforts as a whole. That is why the EU is strongly supporting this major sector. In fact, the biggest part of the EU funding for Uganda goes into the transport sector.
The European Union is also financing the development of rural roads along the districts through which the corridor passes, so that agricultural produce reaches the bypass or the corridor and moves faster to the port of Mombasa and onwards to the markets.
The major objectives of EU's involvement in this sector are improving the flow of traffic and goods, expediting transport policy development and implementation, sustaining economic growth, reducing poverty and promoting regional integration, as well as improving access to rural areas. Focus is put on improvement of the main road network in tandem with improvement of rural transport infrastructure. Various projects in this aspect are currently under execution, with the major ones being the Kagamba-Rukungiri Road in western Uganda and the Kampala Northern Bypass. While the Kagamba-Rukungiri Road was rehabilitated to take transport services nearer to rural farmers, the objective of the Kampala Northern Bypass is to control traffic congestion in the center of the capital city, Kampala. Upon completion, the Kampala Northern Bypass will provide motorists with access to one of the most modern roads in the region. This road will have 4 flyovers, 9 feeder roads, a footbridge and 7 ordinary roundabouts. This is an entirely new road constructed on a new alignment. Over 85% of Uganda's population lives in rural areas where agriculture is the main contributor to their livelihoods. Agriculture accounts for about 60% of Uganda's GDP. It is also the largest employer in the country. However, agricultural productivity has remained low because most farmers have limited access to modern farming techniques, tools and knowledge. Given the importance of the sector, the government of Uganda developed a strategic operational framework. The Plan for Modernization of Agriculture, PMA, to transform and restore the lost glory of the agricultural sector. The mission of the PMA is to transform subsistence agriculture to commercial agriculture as a way of eradicating poverty. To improve the coherence of its involvement in the sector, the EU extensively supported and facilitated the preparation of the PMA. In terms of rural development, the EU has allocated a total of 36.9 million euros to support the different areas of intervention in the PMA. The National Agricultural and Advisory Services, NADS, is one of such areas. These interventions are already yielding tangible and visible results in terms of increased productivity and farmers' income. Yusuf Matovu is a rural farmer and a beneficiary of the NADS program.
Sinzira ku magezi ge tufunye mu NADS tukola okulima nga business era ne tusobola okulya ku ekyo kye tukoze ate ne tutundako nga tetukolera abantu watono.
Like agriculture, fisheries are a major production and wealth creation sector in Uganda. Fisheries activities contribute to household income, food security, and form a significant contribution to foreign exchange earning in the country. The Ugandan fisheries industry is currently based on inland capture from lakes, rivers, and swamps. Lake Victoria, the second largest freshwater lake in the world, is Uganda's most important fishery. The lake provides an estimated annual catch of 500,000 metric tons of fish, valued at 467 million euros with 169 million euros in exports. The waters of Lake Victoria are shared by 3 East African countries: Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. But in the face of the multitude of benefits this lake has to offer, it faces many challenges. Challenges which compel the 3 countries sharing the lake to adopt an integrated fisheries management plan to tackle the problems associated with the management of the resources of Lake Victoria. The project is funded by the European Union and implemented by the Lake Victoria Fisheries Organization.
Some of the measures taken, of course, is to eliminate all illegal fishing practices from the lake, establishment of beach management units, which involves the fisher community, to ensure the fisheries regulations are enforced at grassroots level.
In contribution to sustainable economic growth and development in the Lake Victoria Basin, the European Union granted 29.9 million euros to assist the 3 lake bordering countries implement the fisheries management measures. The current approach is based on fisheries co-management. Here, government and fishing communities share responsibility in fisheries as active partners in planning and development.
The leaders are the beach management unit committees. The leaders would be responsible for one overall management of the beach and the neighborhood fishing areas to make sure that the fishermen who fish are licensed fishers, that they use correct fishing gears and fishing methods, so to ensure that the resource is protected from abusive harvest.
The IFMP has already registered tangible achievements, and the partner states of the East African Community have agreed to undertake another project to focus on the environmentally and socially sustainable economic development of the Lake Victoria Basin.
This is the largest fisheries management project on a single water body on Earth. It's the biggest fisheries project, and we're moving towards a new system of management with the EU support, which is called co-management. So we're moving away from traditionally a top-down approach to a bottom-up approach.
With a population of over 26 million people and a growth rate of 3.5%, Uganda is regarded as a densely populated country. This high population growth rate is exerting pressure on the country's resources. Forestry is one of the resources that have greatly suffered under this pressure, with about 95% of Uganda's energy needs being met by wood. This pressure is even heavier, especially as people clear the forests to use the land for agriculture, to get wood for charcoal, firewood, timber, and poles for construction. Experts in forest management and conservation have passed a warning that the current rate of deforestation is not sustainable. This concern is what attracted the European Union to get involved in the development of programs geared towards the prudent management and conservation of Uganda's forests. The EU's involvement comes in form of a special fund known as the Soil Log Production Grant Scheme, SPGS.
It's a 12 million euro project, and it was covering the conservation of main targeted areas in the Central Forest Reserve of the country, looking at the main natural forests. But as part of that bigger program, it was conceived right from the start in 2002 when FRMCP came into existence, that there should be a component to promote private commercial plantation in the country, because it was thought, and I think it is still believed today, the best way to conserve the remaining natural patches of natural forests is by providing an alternative, and that's plantations.
Commercial plantation forestry operations are expected to yield good returns on investment. This is why many people have come up to participate in this venture. The Kamusime Memorial Rural Development Association in Bushenyi has already demonstrated exceptional progress.
This is one of the big success stories, I think, in Uganda, that you've got a group of people who've worked obviously very well together and are bringing jobs to these people in the community. But not only that, as you can see, this is very good forestry. So it's not just about creating jobs, it's about starting a business.
The European Union believes that growth in the tourism sector will only yield tangible results if the opportunity to trade is combined with the necessary capacities to participate in trade. Through the Uganda Sustainable Tourism Development Program, the government of Uganda and the EU embarked on an aggressive campaign to turn around the withered fortunes of the country's tourism industry. The Uganda Sustainable Tourism Development Program is a 5-year program worth €5 million.
The main focus of the program is in fact to get an increase in the quality tourists coming to Uganda from the main source markets. And in the development of a marketing strategy, we make the point that the prime markets out of the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, the Netherlands are the prime sources In addition to that, you have the regional markets, plus of course the domestic tourism market. And that's where we have been encouraging Uganda to concentrate its efforts.
A strengthened tourism sector is expected to bring benefits to rural communities surrounding protected areas, as well as the diverse community tourism initiatives already operating.
We have received funding to enable us to attend trade fairs. We have received publications in different European languages. We have received facilitation of transport in terms of vehicles. We have received consultants' advice, and we have also received support in maintenance of our website, all of which have helped improve the image of our destination for tourism.
Access to open global markets has been a hallmark of Uganda's economic reform process that started in 1986. It has been an ambitious program that included the privatization of government parastatals, the dismantling of produce marketing boards, and far-reaching changes in Uganda's tariff structure. Through the Everything But Arms initiative, Uganda is a beneficiary of unlimited duty and quota-free access to the European Union market. Over the last 5 years, the European Union has been Uganda's biggest trading partner, consuming over 55% of its total exports. It is also the largest market for a variety of non-traditional exports like flowers, fish, fruits and vegetables. This export performance must be accompanied by supportive policies. The EU is providing financial support to the Ministry of Tourism, Trade and Industry through the Uganda Programme for Trade, Opportunities and Policy, APTOP. This is intended to strengthen the process of implementing trade policies with the involvement of both the private sector and civil society. The cornerstone of this process is the enactment of a trade policy for Uganda. The €4.5 million project is focused on capacity building. Through the Ministry of Trade, Tourism and Industry and the Private Sector Foundation Uganda, it is intended that government decisions on trade matters are beneficial to the country as a whole.
One of the aims or objectives of APTOP was to empower the private sector so that it becomes a force in influencing government policy on trade matters, and also in building capacity within the private sector so that they can monitor and evaluate government policy on trade, and therefore ensure that the private sector is an engine of growth, and also address the problems of poverty within the country as a resultant of trade facilitation.
One of the major challenges government has for long experienced is the provision of adequate social services to its people. Basic education, health, and access to safe water have been major areas of focus. Under its Water for Life initiative, the European Union seeks to bring safe water and sanitation to the world's poorest regions. Today, only 58% of Ugandans have access to clean water. It is in light of this that the European Union supports works on rehabilitation and expansion of Gava Water Works, the main source of treated drinkable water for Kampala.
The project was in 2 stages. The first stage addressed the electromechanical units, the pumping units, and the switch gear and so on. Then the stage 2 tackled the process. So under stage 1, we bought pumps which pump raw water and the pumps which send treated water to town. So that part, the stage 1, cost us about €2 million. And then the stage 2, which involved building these processing units where we are standing, cost us I think close to, it was €3 million.
As with water, the EU also contributes to health-related initiatives through general budget support. The EU further supports the Uganda Health Sector Plan with emphasis on sexual and reproductive health, HIV/AIDS related issues.
We went to the European Union ourselves and brought to their attention the fact that in northern Uganda, because of their special circumstances and because of special circumstances of vulnerability of the young people, regarding reproductive health, including HIV/AIDS, we thought they should put their money and we focus and address those issues at that time.
The European Union is funding various non-government organizations to carry on these health tasks. Marie Stopes and Straight Talk Foundation are some of the NGOs that have put programs in place to address issues relating to HIV/AIDS and reproductive health.
The services we provide in the outreach is, as you know, Marie Stopes is well known for providing permanent method of family planning. And we also, in 2004, we have been giving out sexually transmitted infection drugs to the health centers. We coordinate with the district and we have been giving out these drugs free of charge.
Similar activities are being carried out in internally displaced people's camps in northern Uganda through outreach service deliveries from TASO and the AIDS Information Center. With its cooperation policy, the EU aims to enhance human rights, democracy, the rule of law and good governance. The €7 million program promotes capacity building of governance institutions and improved access to justice and legal awareness by the citizens of Uganda. It also pays attention to parliamentary governance and the election process. One of the pillars of the Cotonou Agreement calls for a participatory approach to the EU-ACP cooperation, placing emphasis on the role of non-state actors, including the civil society. In August 2005, Uganda became the first ACP country to launch a vast program of support to civil society, funded from the 9th European Development Fund. This €8 million program aims to build capacity of civil society organizations, to empower local communities, as well as to hold institutions accountable for policies affecting the poor.
There are various nuances, and some will be in the service delivery, giving out blankets, in IDP camps, giving out ARVs, that's what we call service delivery, doing legal education such as FIDA does, that is straight service delivery. And in that sense, I think civil society has definitely filled in the gap. As the state rolls back because of fewer resources, civil society has had to fill the gap.
The program is conceived to respond to the current development and poverty reduction challenges in Uganda and improve good governance, which is key for the present and future development of the country. The European Union also supports the development of financial institutions in Uganda as part of the Poverty Eradication Action Plan. This assistance is channeled through the support to feasible financial institutions and capacity building efforts project. The mandate of this project is to support microfinance institutions through 3 components of institutional credit, capacity building and new product development.
The total money which is in bank guarantee, we have 2.8 billion shillings, which are put in banks in total for the microfinance institutions to get credit against that. Then the loan portfolio, we have over 540 million, which are currently ongoing. In total, we have about 3.4 billion shillings in credit.
The European Union has been advocating for a conflict-sensitive approach with special focus on the most vulnerable populations in the conflict-affected regions of Karamoja and Acholiland. The Karamoja region is characterized by the illegal possession of firearms, cattle rustling and underdevelopment. Through the Karamoja program, the EU has provided 4.2 million euros to implement micro-projects, foster capacity building, as well as spearhead peace and disarmament initiatives.
During the lifetime of the program, we realized that peace, which was not included in our program, is a very important factor in Karamoja, and we came up with a philosophy and said there will be no peace in Karamoja without economic development, but there will be also no economic development in Karamoja without peace.
The activities that we have put in place is tending towards achieving the objectives of this program. For example, to increase the facilities. We have involved in construction, in particular under the education component, we have been involved in the construction of classrooms, staff houses, kitchens, pit latrines, all in all these districts of Moroto, Kotido, Nakapirepirit, and now we have Kabong, and the fifth one is Abim district.
In the war-ravaged Acholiland in northern Uganda, the EU has supported a decentralized cooperation program, the Acholi program, which was launched in 2001. The program supports unfunded priorities in social infrastructure investments in the district development plans and capacity building of local authorities for effective delivery of public goods and services. Classroom construction, health centers and boreholes are some of the priority areas to which the EU has provided support.
When you look at Uganda as a whole, then you realize that in one part, the bigger part of the country is doing relatively well as far as development is concerned, economic growth, decrease of poverty, whereas one particular part there is doing poorly, and you could even say things have gone worse there than they were before, especially since the Operation Iron Fist. Many more people are now in IDP camps than ever before.
The European Union is also supporting the Northern Uganda Rehabilitation Program. The aim of the 20 million euro program is to rebuild war-affected livelihoods and restore hope for the future. The program attempts to link relief, rehabilitation and development in close collaboration with the Humanitarian Aid Department of the European Commission, ECHO.
Humanitarian aid, opposed to other forms of aid like development aid, is not challenged through government. If there is a humanitarian crisis, a man-made crisis, a conflict, then the government would normally be party to the conflict, as for example in northern Uganda, where the conflict is between the government and the LRA. Therefore, our aid, humanitarian aid, has to be totally independent and impartial of that, and therefore it cannot be challenged through government and is only challenged through independent, international, neutral bodies like the Red Cross movement, the UN agencies or international NGOs.
Until Uganda reaches a self-sustaining level of development, the European Union will continue to expand economic ties as well as deepen the beneficial relationship between the government of Uganda and the European economies.
What people are doing is to identify the market, the chances, and then to make sure that you have that you meet three conditions. That is quality of what you export, quantity, because if it's too small it's of no importance, and regularity. You know, you cannot export something now and next time when the importers wait, you are not ready. So that the challenge is very much on the side of the exporters and not so much